We're always glad when the weather forecast announces high pressure. If, on the other hand, low pressure threatens, we know that bad weather is approaching. The height of air pressure, which is what the terms high and low refer to, plays a key role for the weather. This was discovered by scientist Otto von Guericke in the 17th century. He developed the barometer, an instrument that measures air pressure, which he used to predict the weather. The barometer was only one of the many results of his research into the effects of air or air pressure. The experiments Guericke carried out were based on the discovery that it is possible to produce an airless space or vacuum. When Otto von Guericke began his scientific career, he was already 47 years old and a highly respected man. Guericke was born into a patrician family in 1602 in the city of Magdeburg. He studied law in Leipzig and Jena. He then pursued his scientific interests and studied fortress construction and mathematics in Leiden. But initially, the world of technology and science was only a sideline for Guericke. Other duties awaited him. In 1626, he was elected alderman of Magdeburg. Times were hard. The 30 Years' War was raging in Central Europe. As a free imperial city, Magdeburg was caught between two fronts. In 1631, it was besieged by imperial Catholic troops. Over 20,000 people were killed. Guericke's family survived. As a result of its near destruction, however, Magdeburg lost its independence. A year after the Inferno, Guericke came up with a plan to rebuild the city. In the following years, he promoted the implementation of his plan as developer and treasurer. Guericke eventually became one of Magdeburg's 4 rotating mayors and the city's diplomatic representative. In 1648, he was sent as an envoy to Münster, where an end to the 30 Years' War was sealed in the Westphalian Peace Treaty. Thanks to Guericke's negotiating skills, Magdeburg regained its independence, at least for the time being. A year later, Magdeburg's fate was discussed once again at the Imperial Diet of Nuremberg. Negotiations went on for several months. The diplomat Guericke took advantage of the long breaks in between negotiations to turn his attention to scientific research. Guericke lived in exciting scientific times. Copernicus and other scientists had fundamentally changed people's view of the world and their notion of the cosmos. But many questions still remained unanswered. The infinite space between the stars and planets in particular aroused in Guericke an inextinguishable yearning to explore the subject. What was this something? Was this space empty? Guericke was also a practically minded man. He was convinced that rhetoric and sophistry were of no use to the natural sciences. He wanted to prove facts through experience or sensual perception. Guericke considered experiments to be the key to his research. He wanted to explore the empty space between the stars by artificially recreating it here on Earth. To do this, he had to be able to extract air from a suitable container. But how? Guericke was familiar with hose pipes like those used to extinguish fires. Would it be possible to modify hose pipes so that they could pump out air from a container? But Guericke's scientific deliberations were repeatedly interrupted. Diplomatic duties called again, and negotiations had an unfavourable outcome for Guericke. Magdeburg lost its independence again and fell under the power of Brandenburg's electoral prince. Politically disappointed, Guericke returned to his hometown. He immediately turned his attention to scientific studies and experiments, using up much of his fortune in the process. His first task was to modify the hose pipes. Guericke's first pump was very similar to a water pump. He used it to perform his first experiments. He filled up a barrel with water and closed it as carefully as possible. Then he extracted the water with the help of his pump. Did this leave an empty space in the barrel? But Guericke had not managed to pump out all the water, and he could hear a noise coming from all over the barrel. Air was flowing through the pores of the wood into the space that had been emptied of water. This was preventing a vacuum from being created. Guericke set about improving his pump so that air could be pumped directly. By pulling back a piston, air could be sucked out of the container. When it was pushed in, the cylinder was emptied via a valve. What proved difficult was making the piston and valves airtight. The valves had to be opened and closed at the right time so that air could be drawn out of the container.